quality use of medicines. Let's just remember it's a part of the Australian National Medicines Policy, and it's about deciding whether a medicine is really appropriate for the patient. Is there a therapeutic need for that medication? And then how are you going to monitor and review that medication as well? What are the outcomes going to be? Okay, it's about making sure that you're prescribing within the correct state legislation and what we're actually allowed to prescribe. And it's about prescribing in the patient's interest. It's a collaboration. That's what it is, and the patient is part of that collaboration, agreeing on what the outcomes of the medication are going to be and what the limits of that medication are. Okay, so it's about being safe and effective. And what you will see with the Prescribing Competencies Framework, the National Prescribing Competencies Framework, is that it's geared towards safety and effectiveness. There are 7 components overall to the National Prescribing Competencies Framework, and if you go on to pursue one of the endorsement pathways, it is structured around the National Prescribing Competencies Framework. It's as clear as night and day. Okay, so monitoring outcomes, minimizing misuse, and managing any negative effects, so side effects of the drugs. All right, documentation, make sure it's clear, make sure that it is communicated to other health professionals as well, because one of the risks of being a non-medical prescriber is overprescribing medications. If people aren't communicating with one another as far as the patient's care team is concerned, then the patient might be overprescribed, and that's why communication is important. All right, now it also applies to non-medical prescribers as well. Being part of the healthcare team, advising the patient in terms of medications, that's an expectation in terms of quality use of medicines. So making informed decisions and learning more about health issues and healthcare through information, education and discussion. So there is information you can you can provide to patients that is available on the National Prescribing Services website. Latest consumer-focused information on drugs in terms of safety, where you can get information to tell the patient if you don't know. Becoming more aware of the risks and benefits of medicines. Yeah, particularly in a podiatric perspective. So, for instance, the drugs which are most associated with falls risks, lack of balance, are your psychotropic medications. Antipsychotic medications are associated with weight gain and the development of type 2 diabetes. Just knowing that, as a podiatrist, allows us to anticipate later problems with the lower limb. These patients are more at risk of developing type 2 diabetes as a result of taking antipsychotics. Making sure that you're using the right information, resources. So in the tutorial today, I'll introduce you to all the resources that we will possibly need. There's medicines.com.au. There are now sites where you can type in, and it's absolutely brilliant, all the medications that a patient's taking, and it's a huge database. It will come up with all the possible interactions that there could possibly be. So, for instance, if you've got a patient who's on polypharmacy and they might have some kind of painful tendon problem and you think they might benefit from ibuprofen and NSAID, you can type in all the medications that patient's taking, plus your NSAID, and it will tell you if there's any interactions and whether they're major, whether they're moderate. It's a really good resource. But you still need to know about the main interactions, because what about if you're working in a rural area where there's a really bad internet connection? So, yeah, just little things to think about there. Developing knowledge and skills to use medicines appropriately. Yeah, that would be through CPD. And becoming more aware of the place of medicines in society. So like I told you about today, more and more medications are becoming available over the counter. There's this increasing shift towards self-management of conditions, and we know that might be a problem because patients don't understand necessarily exactly what's in the medication, what adverse reactions there are, what the contraindications are, and it's all right patients being able to, manage things like coughs and sniffles and headaches, but what if they misdiagnose themselves and they've actually got a more serious problem? They just delay the length of time it takes before they do eventually go to the GP, and the problem might be worse by then.